Alright, so this one's about the seven heavens. And I've thought about this topic before, but I guess it kind of came up again because I saw this interview with this guy named Michael Warden. He wrote the book Planet Narnia. He's going through the seven chronicles of Narnia and comparing it to the seven heavens, and it kind of relates back to this medieval cosmology they had of the world about these seven distinct classifications for everything. And seven is like the divine number. You see this in the Bible about it's like the perfect number by God, and also Pythagoras would mention, it's like a sacred, indivisible, holy number, God's number, I guess. And if you use the app or website Bible Hub and you just look up the word 7 or 12, and you'll just see all the string of verses connected to the number 7 and 12. These seven churches in Revelation. Well, it all starts in Genesis with the 7 days of creation. These 7 days where he creates everything that exists. And the seventh day he rests. That's called the Sabbath. Then the Jews would, not work on the Sabbath day, mimicking God's day of creation where he rests on the seventh day. You have the 7 days of the week set up like that, of the days of creation. Then you go to Revelation, you have these seven churches, the seven archangels, the seven deacons that are chosen in Acts 6, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 days, 7 years. Old Testament, so you can just do endless examples of the number 7 and also the number 12. And it's connected through everything in the Bible, but other than the Bible, if you think about medieval times, they had a certain cosmology of the world, which is these 7 planets. And that's basically what his book, Planet Narnia, is talking about, how C.S. Lewis wrote these chronicles of Narnia. There's 7 chronicles, and they're representing this medieval cosmology about the 7 planets and these 7 gods, basically, Roman, Greco-Roman, where they have these certain attributes associated with the planets, these pagan deities, and each one is represented by a planet and a certain god, either the Greek god or the Roman god, but they're actually kind of the same. They're just named differently. And you kind of see this pattern of this divine thing with the 7. It's seen in everything. And there's 7 continents. There was another video I did about the elements. How it's like the foundation. I realized that the number 7 is kind of all the elements, all the foundation for a lot of different things. So if you think about the color spectrum, rainbow, there's 7 colors in the color spectrum. Everything other than those 7 is just a mix of the other ones, the primary ones. It's like a spectrum where you're mixing them together, but there's 7 primary colors, RGB basically. And then there's the 7 musical notes. Everything that can be produced musically depends upon these fundamental 7 notes. And also in the 7 and the 12, there's like 5 natural notes, and then the other ones equal 12 total notes. But there's 7 musical notes, 7 colors. I also think about the 7 virtues and 7 deadly sins. And as far as philosophy, there's an interesting historical account, like these 7 sages of Greece. And I think they were before Socrates, and they were like these wise elders, sages, that gave this wisdom that they say was a precursor to Plato and Socrates. They kind of learned from them. Anyways, the interesting thing is, I'll start with the 7 days of the week. And I just learned this recently, it's so obvious now, but each day is represented by the planet or the god, and they have a certain attribute to that. So Sunday was the day of the sun. And you can look at all these in Latin, like Dies Solis, Dies Lunae, Dies Martis, Dies Mercury. So Sunday was the day of the sun, Monday was the moon, Tuesday was Mars, Wednesday was Mercury, Thursday is Jupiter, Friday is Venus, Saturday is Saturn. And a couple of these you can already see the root word. So Sunday was the day of the sun, and it represented light and life and energy. Monday, the day of the moon, was like feminine darkness, and cycles, represents cycles. So you can connect each one with these Greek gods. So Sunday, the sun was Helios or Apollos. Monday, Luna, Artemis, Diana, or Selene. So it's interesting. If you look at astrology or anything related to space, like NASA, they're always naming it after these Greek gods or Roman gods. So think about Artemis or Apollo. They're named after these gods. So if you understand each day, let me just go through the root words so you'll like know the days, because I didn't even know this. So Sunday, day of the sun. Monday comes from moon, the day of the moon. Tuesday comes from Tu or Tyr, or this god of Mars, which represented like war, conflict, or Aries. So Tuesday, god of Mars. Wednesday it comes from like German tradition and like these Norse gods, Norse mythology. The god of Woden or Wednesday is Mercury. Thursday is the god of Thor, Jupiter, where we get like thunder. He was the god of thunder. Thursday, Thor. And then Frigg is Friday, which is Venus, who was the god of like love, beauty, fertility, Aphrodite. Then you have Friday. I already said Friday. Sorry. Then you have Saturday, which is the day of Saturn, which was time, discipline, and endings. So let me just read through the gods first so you know. Sun, Helios or Apollos. Luna, the moon, Artemis, Diana, Selene. And then Mars, Aries, Tu, Tyr. Mercury, Hermes, Woden, Odin. Jupiter, Zeus or Thor. Venus, Aphrodite or Freya. And Saturn is Kronos. So each day of the week comes from these gods, comes from this like traditional understanding of these 7 planets. So the planets we've obviously changed because it was the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn was the 7 classical planets that everything was kind of based upon, this cosmology understanding of the world. And then you have Kepler, Copernicus, they started discovering different things about astronomy. He wrote Harmony of the Spheres, these 7 spheres. It was this divine number, but then we, discovered that the sun and the moon we don't consider planets anymore. We have like Neptune and Uranus. And then if you had Earth, that would be a total of 8. But if you look at it without, there's the Earth and there's 7 other planets around us, but they just have these 7 planets, which is Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. So everything is kind of has a foundation of these 7 heavens, 7 planets, 7 gods, the 7 liberal arts. So if you ever have a classical education, or the education that everyone had basically up until the early 1900s, 1950s, people had classical educations, which was based on these 7 liberal arts. And the liberal arts, they have a different meaning than they do today. I mean, the arts, liberal meaning freedom, arts meaning a skill or craft or something that can produce as well, but it has a different meaning than just the fine arts today. But these 7 liberal arts, you look up a picture of, just look up the 7 liberal arts images of this famous painting of this kind of traditional understanding of the world, and it's kind of like this geometrical circle thing with these 7 different aspects of knowledge. So they're divided into 2, which is the trivium, 3 of them, and the quadrivium, which is 4 of them. The trivium, 3 things are grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And this was like the foundation of a liberal education, or to be educated was these liberal arts that you master. Grammar, logic, rhetoric. Grammar is the art of thinking or knowledge. Signs and symbols, like, arithmetic, you learn the alphabet, how to read, you learn the basics of math, how to count. The knowledge of just first gaining the information. Then there's logic, the art of inventing and combining the symbols or understanding. So first you learn the alphabet, the grammar, how to read, and then you learn logic, which is understanding, and then you have rhetoric, which is the art of communication of thought or wisdom. So knowledge, understanding, and wisdom, grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And if you look at any classical school, they'll have these 3 stages where they have it all divided for the certain age of the child. So they start with the grammar stage where they're, learning the basics, the foundations, the elementary stuff. Logic, which is, they're starting to do math, they're starting to combine the things and read. Then they get to rhetoric, which is where they can understand the symbols, and they can actually produce essays of their own thoughts, their own viewpoints, ideas. It's more than just the knowledge and the understanding of the knowledge. They're actually understanding how to speak, how to articulate, how to write, how to incorporate the mathematical equations that they learned into, real life. The other 4 are the quadrivium, which is arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. So arithmetic is the study of discrete quantities. Geometry is the study of continuous quantities in space, shapes. Music is the study of discrete quantities in time. So you learn rhythm, you learn mathematical systems as well. Astronomy is the study of continuous quantities in time and space. So with the trivium and the quadrivium, you have 7 liberal arts. The trivium is the qualitative stuff. The quadrivium is the quantitative stuff. So this was just a basic understanding that everyone had until the modern education changed, and you could go back to like John Dewey, but basically the liberal education today is completely morphed from what a classical education, we call it a classical education, but it's just because we have this modern liberal education that's kind of a joke and like not rooted in foundational stuff. You just learn what these little bits and pieces of things to, get the exam questions right, get the grade, memorize it for the test, and then you'll forget it. You don't even know the origins of things. You don't read primary text. You don't have a good foundation understanding of everything. You just kind of know this one little section to master it, so you can memorize it for the test and move on. You're not getting true education. So yeah, that was pretty cool, the connection of all these 7s, I guess. Obviously in Revelation, there's 7 plagues, 7 bowls, 7 trumpets, 7 seals. And then you have the divine number of 12 as well. These are like God's numbers. 12 disciples, the 12 tribes, the 12 gates. If you look at the generations of King David or to Jesus, they go by 7 generations, or everything is by 7s, 7 sacrifices, or there's a whole study of like biblical numerology and study of numbers. And then it's also interesting if you look at Pythagoras and his just like obsession with these numbers and these divine ratios, and each number had a different meaning to it. And also any kind of epic or hero's journey, there's going to be some 7 involved. So I think the Harry Potter series has like 7. The Lord of the Rings, there's like 7 rings. And C.S. Lewis and Tolkien knew each other, so they're kind of correlated in a way. I mean, the Chronicles of Narnia and the Lord of the Rings, but you see it through a lot of different popular things of this 7 covenants in the Bible. And I heard something about how there's these 7 heavens in Dante, but I didn't find that. I thought there was like 9, so I don't know where that came from, but I guess it just goes back to a medieval cosmology thing, but they had a certain understanding of the celestial spheres and how everything was set up to these 7 things. Yeah, I guess the coolest connection was the 7 liberal arts, the 7 notes, the 7 sages, the 7 days of the week, 7 days of creation, 7 virtues, 7 sins. I guess we kind of base our whole world around 7 and 12. I mean, there's 7 days of the week, 12 months of the year. And there was a lot of significance in astrology and astronomy and how these celestial bodies would give us certain signs, and they're a way to distinguish a certain point in time. So you can see this with the whole New Age stuff about the study of astrology, about they think that every point in time can be defined by these planets and stars and constellations, and the way that they're ordered or at a certain place at a certain time. They're kind of like a stamp of something that will come. So in the Bible, it's the North Star, or that led the wise men to the Messiah, to Jesus' birth, the nativity scene. There's a lot of people that believe in astrology as in like your birth month is related to how these stars are aligned, and that will give you certain attributes or certain things that you tend to do. Or there's even this whole Eastern religion about how it's connected to it as well. But these 7 days of the week, these 7 gods, Greek times, Roman times, Greco-Roman times, they had a certain attributes to these planets, to these gods. So the sun, light, life, energy, you already said that. The moon, feminine, darkness, cycles. They go through different cycles. You think about the cycles of the tide, that's related to the gravitational pull of the moon. You think about, the menstrual cycle. I mean, that's in periods of every 7 days of the week, but it's kind of related to the moon as well, about these different cycles that appear every month. And then, the lunar cycles, where they have these different cycles that it reaches different stages. You have Mars, which is the god of war, conflict. You have Mercury, which is like cleverness, intellect, trickery, and trade. You have Jupiter, which is justice, kingship, prosperity. Venus, which is like the god of love, beauty, fertility. Saturn, which is time or discipline or endings, or also agriculture. And I think the whole world kind of knew this already. Definitely in Greek times and definitely in medieval times, they knew these attributes. They knew these stories. Definitely the Greeks, they knew these stories by how we know the Bible, or how they knew Homer, and that was a central part of their cultures, these epics. And you think about Dante's epic, his poem, Paradise Lost, obviously Homer, the Aeneid in the Roman times. They had these massive poems or stories that were a representation of their whole culture and civilization, kind of what everyone looked to as like their myth, that was how they order their life around. I mean, it's the same hero's journey over and over and over, but they were rooted in these pagan gods, rooted in these attributes, these planets, and they were passed down originally through, just storytelling, and then they got the written word, but started putting it on papyrus and paintings, and now we have books, but I think everyone solidified these stories in their minds and in their families through generations. And when you look at the heavens, you see these stars, it was like a representation of this god or whatever. And I mean, it's really died off today, but then there's those people that do believe in astrology that still kind of connect it about your birth date, when you were born, has a certain correlation to who you will be, or these constellations like Scorpion, and these different constellations that will decide what your personality is, or what you even mix with other people, like certain personalities. connect or attract other people and then repel other ones. And there is some truth to that. I wouldn't base it in astrology. I'd say that the planets and the stars, they do have meaning because it's like representing a place in time. I mean, they do have meaning. They're for signs and for seasons, how we know the seasons. Everything's at a specific spot each season in their orbits. And they do tell us something. They give information because, I mean, other than the seasons, they tell you what's to come, as in which season is coming to exact mathematical point. I mean, we have the months down to the day of like these months and these days. And this is 1 year is 365, this many rotations. One full rotation around the sun is a year. And each planet has a certain amount of speed that it's rotating at, and they're all in a certain orbit, going at a certain speed. And it's like a mathematical precise. We know exactly when this, what's going to happen. And you could even predict like eclipses and when they'll cross a certain point. So Thales of Miletus, the first philosopher, he, I think, predicted the first eclipse, and everyone was amazed at his wisdom because he used math to basically say at what certain time the sun was going to go black and the whole sky was going to go dark, because he predicted an eclipse. I don't know if it was a solar eclipse or what, but they're predictable and they're for signs and they have information. A lot of these geniuses throughout the classics and history, they studied these signs, they studied the mathematical precision of them. Copernicus, Euclid, Ptolemy, Kepler, Newton, Einstein, Da Vinci. Really just go through the list of geniuses and you're going to find that they looked at the stars for certain things and calculated their routes and kind of got information out of them. The 7 kind of represents a complete or whole number. It's the divine number, I already said that. It's not biblical as in 7 heavens. That's just a medieval thing. There's only like 3 heavens, noted in the Bible about the 3rd heaven. But I think that's pretty much all I got. I think there has to be some truth that they have certain attributes to them. I mean, I don't believe they're deities, but they do have certain attributes. I mean, you can look at their temperature, you can look at the speed you can look at how many rotations they do, or how hot it is, or how cold it is. Mars has this aspect of just a desert and rocks, and they do have a certain personality in a way. I mean, yeah, we're just associating it to material, natural phenomenon, but I think there's just something about them of, humanity has kind of deified them, that it's something out there, that they're these huge bodies that are somewhat alive. I mean, I don't know if they don't have life, but they appear just like, they have weather, they have movement, they have a terrain, they have an existence it's almost like they're there for a reason, or it's kind of beyond us. It's so much beyond us that we've based our whole life around this clock, because they're a clock. I mean, the calendar days, the physical clock that has 12, that's another thing of the 12. We base our calendar and our time all around these celestial orbiting bodies around us. Your watch is just marching in step to the same orbit that these planets are going around. And it's how we tell time, and it's how we get a specific date. And there's definitely a correlation of your birth. If you look at any of the greats, or any of the myths, or any of these godlike people, it's all centered around their birth. I mean, Jesus, obviously, the divine birth, the birth of God, the nativity scene, Christmas. It's the famous, we were predicting his birth. His birth was miraculous. The wise men traveled thousands of miles to come to this birth because it was something like no other. If you look at Alexander the Great or Socrates, there's always this legend behind their birth was coming. It was prophesied about. It was a great person that was going to be born. And their birth and their death always has significance about how they died or how they were born. But throughout all of human history, from the beginning of time to the end of the time, it's the same stars and the same planets that we look to base our life around. I mean, even if you're not doing it directly, knowingly, you're doing it indirectly. Your life is based around this same clock. This nature has a clock. It's a biological clock. Humans created the clock to measure the same time. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. So peace.